In a recent episode of his podcast, my buddy Pete Everett was sharing some of the techniques he's using to improve his SEO using tools like ChatGPT and Bard. Now, what really stuck out to me in this conversation was the way he was using Bard to kind of decode what was happening inside of Google's search algorithm. There's a bit of reverse engineering that goes into this that I find really fascinating. So I invited Pete to come on the show today to talk to us a little bit more in depth about this topic and really dive into AI through the lens of SEO. We start this conversation by talking about some of the key differences between ChatGPT and Bard. We also talk about some of the pitfalls that can come along with using AI tools, some of Pete's recommendations, as well as the policies he's implemented inside of his agencies. And we take a long time to screen share and walk you through step by step some of the techniques he's using with clients and through his own agency now to not only improve results with SEO, but to speed up and save a lot of time. I think this was a fantastic conversation, and there are golden nuggets sprinkled throughout this entire session, so I would really encourage you to stick around for the whole thing. I promise that if you do, you're going to walk away from this conversation with practical things you can go use inside your agency right away. So with all that in mind, let's dive in. So Pete, for those watching that haven't gotten familiar with you yet, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about what it is you do and kind of why you're here talking to us about SEO and AI today.
Okay, so my name's Pete. I do two things in my life, generally speaking. One is I run a digital agency here in the UK called So Digital Communications, and we are very much a kind of normal, average, run-of-the-mill digital agency. We build WordPress websites, we build Laravel applications, and then we market those things through SEO and PPC. That's what we do.
You got to work
And
on
then
that elevator pitch. We're an average agency isn't really selling it for me.
Well, I'm guessing my normal, my customers aren't necessarily going to be
Sure.
watching this. Although we do work white label with some people. So if you do have any needs and need extra capacity, get in touch with me now.
If you need any average agencies, call Pete.
The second thing that I do is I also run a white label service called SEO Hive. I do that in partnership with a fellow American, Jeffrey Patch, and yeah, we offer content-based and local SEO plans on a white label basis to help agencies build recurring revenue. Off the back of those two things, I also run a couple of podcasts, one called Retain FM, and the other, which is just launching just as this goes live, is called the WP SEO Show. So yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Love it. And it was actually your podcast, your original OG podcast, the Pete Everett podcast that I'm used to listening to, that sparked this conversation or the idea for this conversation today. So you did an episode a couple months back. I'll make sure to put links wherever you're watching or listening to this so you can get to it. But you did an episode where you're talking about kind of how you're using AI in your SEO processes. So I've been getting fairly into ChatGPT, but mostly for like creating ideas and helping me brainstorm for writing and things like that. So I've been more on like the content side of it and hadn't really put in a whole lot of applications on SEO so much. But you said something in there and I kind of took notes. So I'm paraphrasing here. This wasn't a direct quote from you, but you were talking in that episode where you were using Bard to audit content essentially.
Yep.
And really excited about that prospect because you're using Google's tool to say like, hey, go tell me what is good and bad about this website, using Google's tool to figure out what Google thinks about something. And I imagine as an SEO person, before that, you're looking at websites and having to kind of like imagine what Google thinks about it. And here, maybe you have some kind of glimpse into what Google actually thinks. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this like entire subject of AI and how you're using it and SEO specifically. So that's kind of what sparked my interest in this topic anyways.
Cool. Yeah. So basically the premise behind that is if we go kind of big picture to begin with and then hone on down. So the first thing is, there are now a number of AI tools that are available out there. The vast majority of them that are kind of own brand are normally run through the OpenAI API. OpenAI API, which is ChatGPT essentially that's driving it. But Google, of course, has its own, and there are a couple of others or some other kind of independent ones, but certainly ChatGPT and Bard are the main two. The key thing really to understand is just like with any tool or any software that you have, I saw today, Kyle, you put a video out about a hack through using a free Figma account, for example. But you can use Figma, you can use Adobe, you can use, I'm not a designer, a whole load of other design programs out there. Absolutely. Just like that, there are different applications in AI that have different benefits. So you kind of need to understand the tools a little bit in order to get the best out of them, in my opinion. So if you take ChatGPT, which is by far the most widely known AI generator out there, it is based on a generative pre-training transformer language model. That's what GPT stands for, generative pre-training transformer. Now, essentially, that means that it is learning off a database that's running in the background. And that database is capped as at the time we're recording this at September 2021. So you can't really start going and asking ChatGPT about current day affairs or 2023 trends or this, that, and the other, because it just doesn't know. It doesn't have access to that information. That doesn't make it useless, though. It does have two exceptionally good applications. One is to do with writing and generating content, and the other is to do with feeding information in. So just because its database doesn't hold something doesn't mean that you can't feed data into it. You just can't research data out of it post September 2021. There are some cons to it, of course, like with anything. The UI is a bit clunky. Trying to find an old chat that you had months ago is a royal pain in the rear.
I'll tell you what, I've started a bookmark folder in my browser called ChatGPT. You've probably seen it on my screen shares. And then inside of that folder are subfolders for different categories of things. And then each of those will link into certain ChatGPT threads because, like you said, it's like impossible to find anything in there. So I've had to create my own system to find things.
Yeah, which, I mean, come on, you've got millions of users. People are now paying you for it. ChatGPT also isn't free if you want to use GPT-4. So come on, you can do a bit better than that, surely. Then on the flip side, you've got Bard. Now, Bard works on a different language model. It's called a pathways language model. It's technically called Palm 2, but there you go. But the key thing with Bard, now it isn't as good as writing sentences. You find that if you try to get prose out of Bard, you end up with a lot more repetition than you would out of something like ChatGPT. But crucially, Bard can query Google. So anything that you can type into Google, you can also put into Bard, or more crucially, Bard can also like follow a train of thought, querying multiples of those things and give you more rich results. And then you kind of highlighted this earlier as well. Bard is Google's tool. So if you're wanting to uncover, this is where we maybe start touching on some more SEO type themes. The whole point of an SEO is to try and understand how Google's going to interpret something to help it rank as meaningfully as it can in the search results. And it's trying to do that so that Google themselves can pay the most, charge the most money for the ads that are at the top, because that's how they make their cash out of it. So by using Bard as a research tool, getting it to read pages, getting it to query themes and look at website structures, compare top 10s, all of that kind of stuff, you can very easily start to build up quite a meaningful picture from an SEO perspective about where you need to be placing things, how things should be structured, and you're taking out a whole load of that guesswork. Crucially, you're taking out a whole load of that research that you'd have to do otherwise, which just makes you more efficient.
Well, I'll be transparent here. This morning in preparation for this call, I went, how do you get to Bard again? I can't remember how to get to it. And I went back to your podcast episode, and thankfully you had a link, and I clicked on it. And it took me to wherever the Bard interface is. And I had seen like my history there, and it was literally 3 times I had used it before. So I know very little about Bard. I think probably what I was trying to do with it was treat it more like ChatGPT, and it wasn't behaving in the way I expected ChatGPT to behave. So I probably bounced from it. So what's really exciting to me is kind of hearing these ideas of how, the right tool for the job, right? I do wonder though, and I want to question you on this because you've had some time to like experiment with these things and dive in a little bit deeper. I'm going to use a different situation to try to draw parallels here, and maybe it's not a good one, but I'll get frustrated with Google because we're worried about Google's page speed, right? So we go to the Google page speed test and we run it, and then it says, hey, your page speed is awful, and it's because of Google Analytics and Google Fonts. And I'm like, how can this how can this be? Like Google is dinging me for Google products being on my website. And I think the explanation that I've heard for that is like, these are two completely separate teams. The fonts team ain't hanging out with the page speed insights team, right? So I wonder if is that a problem here? Is the Bard AI team really that tuned into the SEO algorithm team? Or did that AI team make the same assumptions we've been making forever? And I don't know that there's a way to like definitively answer that, but I'm sure anecdotally you could probably draw some conclusions by this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is the $1 million question. And whenever, even if you had somebody from Google on the call right now, you
Right.
wouldn't get a definitive answer out of
Sure.
it. The reality is that from a research, and this is my experience, and in using both tools, and I have done some comparisons where I've run either identical prompts or certainly very similar prompts, maybe slightly rewritten for each interface, but the run basically the same things through each section, each platform, and got very differing results. And we're going to touch on this a bit later. I know we're going to run a few examples on screen a bit later in the call, and I mean, if you want, we can even go and do one of these. I do feel that some of the issue Bard has is these models are designed to learn for themselves. So I do feel that when we'll get onto this when we do some of the examples, you'll see that like when we run a local SEO audit or a local SEO prompt through Bard, the whole top section just feels like it's been done a million times. It isn't unique to my script at all. It gives you like the top 5 best practices for local SEO, and it just feels like it's a churned out response that could be in the search results, in like the questions that pop up, the featured questions on a search result. It feels a bit like that. Whereas, but on the same note, if I then tell Bard to go and review a website for to find internal linking opportunities for this keyword, all of a sudden it has to go and learn it itself. It might take it a little bit longer, but it can then go and query the top 10 for that keyword, see what their internal structures are like, identify some links, and give me some meaningful information back. You do that with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just says, I can't read the internet. So if it's not in the database, I can't learn from it. So it very much comes down to horses for courses, as we were talking about. Whether the two are integrated at a development level, I don't know. But the reality is that Bard certainly can query the search results, which gives it a leg up on real-time performance.
I asked that question, and then I'm also not convinced that's even an appropriate question to ask. I'm gonna butcher this story as well, and it's like a research thing, so I should probably like looked up facts. But you know me, I'm not big into facts. We'll just fly by the seat of our pants here. So I remember a story where they were talking about training like early computers to play chess, right? And so the way they did that before was they'd put all the chess pieces on the board, and then they'd figure out the probabilities of each move, right? And that's how they programmed these computers to play chess, was all based on math probabilities. And now they've trained AIs to play chess, but instead of feeding them probabilities on what would win, they just fed them millions and millions of hours of footage of people playing chess. And the AI was significantly better by just dissecting what actually won in real games than it was going off of that probability thing. So maybe my point in talking about those two things together is maybe it being directly integrated into Google's algorithm isn't even that important. Maybe the AI being fed enough things into like figuring out what Google's doing, maybe that's a better approach too. So it's interesting and fascinating and kind of scary all at the same time.
It is absolutely. Yeah, you're dead right. And look, the other thing you've got to bear in mind, so we've talked about ChatGPT, we've talked about Bard. The other thing you've got to bear in mind, and I know we're going to touch on this in a little bit later as well, is there are other bespoke apps, some of them powered by ChatGPT. Well, Bard doesn't really open its doors as easily, so most of them are powered by ChatGPT, but they are there for a particular purpose as well. And if you want to build up a tool set, we're probably going to touch on a tool called Surfer SEO a bit later on in the call. Now, Surfer, it does have AI built into it in the sense that it can generate content, but actually where the AI started in Surfer was its ability to compare the data you put in against the top 10 results. So from an SEO's perspective, we can audit pages against other results in the top 10. We can audit copy as we're writing it against the results in the top 10. We can, again, find internal links, look at how many images we need, how many headings, how many sections, etc., etc. And you can get all that information straight there. Now, you can't get that very easily if you try to write a prompt for Bard, but that is a tool that has a specific output that is also using AI in order to do the queries. So you don't necessarily have to know all of this yourself. There are tools out there, although word of warning, this can get very expensive if you go out there and buy every AI tool on the internet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do like that approach so much better because one thing that worries me about the AI stuff is the amount of people that are just going to take the lazy approach of like, write me a blog post about XYZ. And then whatever it spits out, they're just going to copy and paste and put into their blog. And they're going to say, boom, content marketing done. But what you just described here, as far as like this process of measuring what you have against the top 10 results, whatever, those were things you were doing before. You were going through the top 10 results and figuring out what kind of content they had and how many headings and what keywords they were using. But it was a really like intense, labor intense process to do that. It took man hours to do that. And now you're just kind of replacing those man hours with AI that can do it in seconds. And to me, that feels like a much better like use of this technology.
So if I can give a shout out to a very good friend of mine, a bloke called Bob Gentle. And I was on a call with Bob. We're in a mastermind group together, and we support each other with a few things. And I was on a call with him, and he was running some coaching that included a section about coaches using AI for their content marketing, and touching on that exact point. And Bob likened it to the 80-20 rule. So AI, at the absolute most, AI can only ever get you 80% of the way to the finished output. It cannot talk like you. It is not going to talk like a Texan living in Virginia. It just doesn't work. Thank God. Absolutely. But so if you're using it to generate social posts, if you're generating blogs, whatever, you can by all means put in the prompts to generate the word count to end up with some kind of Google Doc or Notion Doc or whatever it is you're using. But you can't replace that extra 20% of work you've got to put in at the other end. Firstly, to fact check everything, because it could be completely bull. And the second thing is to make it yours, to make it sound like you. In terms of, from a purist SEO perspective, the problem with people basing too much of their work on AI generated content as opposed to using the AI tools to help them optimize content is that we'll end up with too much repetition. And AI tools, that's one of the biggest criticisms of them anyway, is that they do repeat themselves quite a lot. But I'm not just talking about repetition in one document. I'm talking about my website having the same copy as your website, having the same copy as somebody else's website, maybe just with the chunks in a different order. It's not, the collective isn't going to win over a period of time if we all take that approach. But as we've said, using these tools, harnessing the power of these tools to make your processes more efficient is certainly what they can be used for. In both of my businesses, we've made the policy decision that we will never publish an AI generated sentence, an AI generated prose, essentially. But we will absolutely harness the power of these things so that our process to create that prose can be expedited, which gives better value to the customer, better value to us, and ultimately, in that sense, everyone's kind of a winner.
Yeah, man, I could go down so many rabbit holes in this conversation. I'm trying to hold myself back here. Let's stay on the topic at hand here. So I think before we move into like doing some demos and stuff, because that's probably going to be the most valuable part here for people is seeing like some of these things in action.
Yep.
We kind of just touched on a few of these things, and your policy in your company is one that I think I probably need to add to my company policies as just, it's just me, but now I have a guideline to follow. I really like that. But let's talk about some of these warnings. Before we give people the great power, let's give them the great responsibility. What are some of the warnings we should be thinking about before we start using these tools?
Right. So first thing, if you are using AI in your business, don't pretend that you're not, because ultimately people will find out. And we're not at the minute. Look, we've all heard of like plagiarism checkers, copyscape, things like that. At the minute, AI checkers aren't brilliant, but one day they will be. And if you're selling premium work to clients, taking a good fee, they've come to you as the professional, and then you're going to get the rug pulled under your feet in 6, 8, 12 months time because the AI checkers then pick it up. You're not going to do your own credibility any good. So just, if you are using it, be honest about how you're using it, but don't pretend that you're not using it. The second thing, which is probably bigger than the first, is if you are generating copy or anything out of AI, you've got to fact check absolutely everything. There's tons and tons of YouTube videos about, basically humiliating AI for where it gets stuff wrong. You don't want that to be you. If you're using it in a professional setting, this isn't a joke. Make sure you've make sure you fact check it. Avoid the repetition of the output. That's a very key thing on it. Don't over rely on it either. I think that's a key thing. If you're a developer or a designer or whatever, if you're not naturally a copywriter, AI isn't going to make you one. You need to have the background knowledge, the background skill set in order to make the most of it. Otherwise, you're just a regurgitator of something that's been given to you.
I think I want to add on to that point a little bit, because I do talk with a lot of copywriters and their kind of thoughts on AI. And I think naturally they're a little bit more defensive about it because copywriting's been one of the things that AI has kind of like swallowed up the quickest. But I do think there's more to it than that, than the defensiveness of like, don't let the robots take my jobs. I think there's a lot of people who say, you know what, I put stuff into ChatGPT and it sounds fine to me, but they were never really writing a ton before. They might have not developed a really strong voice to say, hey, this is exactly how I would say this, and this is not how I would say it. And I do think there's a lot to that. So if you weren't writing a bunch before, then maybe what ChatGPT spits out, maybe that sounds like, you don't have a strong body of work to go off of. I think now, like, I've tried to have it write things for me for the admin bar, even just like social media posts. I'm like, there's no way this will fly. Everyone in the group will know Kyle didn't say that, because not that I have a good way of talking or that people have like are really jazzed about hearing what Kyle has to say, but they've just heard me go on enough about things that they would know immediately that that wasn't my voice. So I think that's part of the deal is if you weren't writing a whole bunch before, then maybe you don't see the difference, but I'm writing tons all the time. And when you get to that point, you definitely see the difference between the two.
Absolutely. So, but to just build on that point, you write a lot of social media posts, so it's not within the realm of possibility that some days you're just gonna struggle to find inspiration.
Sure.
In which case, there's no problem in going to ChatGPT or Bard or any other AI tool out there and saying, right, give me 50 social media ideas for web designers to put in a Facebook group. 35 of them might be a load of crap. That's absolutely fine. But if those other 15, if they just give you the inspiration to then write whatever those posts eventually become, then the AI's done its job. It's helped you out of a sticky scenario. In my agency, we work with an American client that's a lawyer. They deal with lemon cars. They do lemon law claims, essentially. And every month they do a roundup of the latest recalls for the previous month in different states. Well, our guys sat here in England, we're pretty good at copywriting, and we work in hundreds of different sectors with different clients across the year. But we don't have the time to go and research every single manufacturer recall in different states of America. But you know what? Bard can pull that information out of Google News for us. So we have no problem in going and getting the initial list of recalls out of Bard. Of course, we then go and fact check them to make sure they happen, get proper sources for them, etc., etc. But actually, just the compilation of the initial list, that job could have taken somebody the best part of a morning to do, and now they can do it in 10 minutes, which gets them out of the starting gate in order to generate that piece of content.
Absolutely. All right, sorry, we derailed there a little bit.
It's all right. Well, really, the last warning I've got, apart from applying the 80-20 rule, is you do have to watch the costs. And you've got to be really wary of some of these costs where it says AI built in, because it normally means that it's powered by ChatGPT, and ChatGPT you can get for $20 a month to use GPT-4. A prime example of this, look, I'm a massive advocate for ClickUp. ClickUp baked in AI into the into the back end interface, but the only way you can buy it is to pay $5 a month for every member seat that you have. All right, at SEO Hive, we have about 15 member seats. So that would cost me what, $125 just to get essentially what is ChatGPT in the back end of ClickUp. Well, ChatGPT cost me $20 a month, and you can log in from multiple sources at the same time. So you just got to be really careful about what some of these things are basically rebadging, particularly ChatGPT as, and watch those costs.
Yeah, I think every company has just said, hey, we have to put AI. Like, everybody has AI in their product now. How do we just stuff AI into this? Even if it doesn't make sense, let's just do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Surfer, that we're going to talk about in a bit, again, has exactly the same. It does exactly the same. Their AI credits are extortionately expensive, but it's all powered by ChatGPT. So guess what? I don't pay Surfer for any AI credits.
Yeah.
Because if we need that information, I'll log into ChatGPT and get it that way.
There you go. All right, so I think we'll move on here to some practical use cases. I want to get you sharing your screen and give us a little bit of training and show us some cool tricks we could be doing here.
Okay, great. So let's start with right. First things first, Kyle. I can give you this to share. Now, this probably is the most comprehensive prompt that I've developed. This is a prompt to run a basic local SEO audit on any given business. So, Kyle, I'll give you this to share in the show notes. It's just in a Google Doc, so however you want to share it.
But I will sell it for $100.
You can try, but you can get it online for free. So basically what this prompt is going to do is to put in very simple terms what best practice local SEO techniques are, and then analyze a Google My Business profile and make some recommendations based on that. So if I copy this prompt and take it to, let's go to ChatGPT first. So I'm going to stick it in ChatGPT, and I will say Ogle Web Design. Where's it based? Is it still registered in Texas, or is it registered in
Richmond, Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia. And for full disclosure, I haven't done this before with Kyle.
And
so
for full disclosure, the last thing I want is a local client, so I'm okay if this fails.
Okay, fair enough. There we go. So, right, I'm going to let ChatGPT go and do its thing. And just to highlight the point, I'm then going to go and log into Bard, and I'm literally just going to copy and paste the same thing over into that, so that we can see a bit of a comparison here. And hopefully this will highlight the point about how you want to use the right tool for the right purpose. So this is a process that we've used in order to approach local businesses. So in my agency, I do want to have local businesses as clients. I don't necessarily want other local agencies as clients, I'll be honest. But yeah, I do want to approach local businesses for a number of things. And therefore, we've used this is something we've used in order to start generating some reports to send off to them as a bit of a cold outreach kind of campaign. So Bard, I'm guessing that ChatGPT is still writing. Yes, it is. So let's do Bard first. Bard's come up with the results a bit quicker. As you can see at the top, now this is what I was talking about earlier. This bit kind of feels like it has been written a number of times.
Mm.
This is kind of spat out. The other thing I should have mentioned before is that the prompt, which I can't open right now, asked for certain things to be laid out in a table so that I could copy and paste them into a doc and share them to a client. But it's this top bit, it isn't great. It could be a lot better. However, then we get on to things like, here are the best 10 long tail search keywords that Ogle Web Design Richmond, Virginia should try to rank for to get local customers if you wanted them. Richmond Web Design, Web Design Services in Richmond, Affordable Web Design Richmond, Custom Web Design Richmond, SEO Friendly Website Design Richmond. Now, none of these might be rewriting the rule book, but look how quickly I got them. And looking down the list, I mean, look, this is about your business, Kyle. So is there anything there that if you did want a local client that you wouldn't think would be a reasonable term?
No, it all looks fine. I mean, it's fairly generic. It didn't, it's not earth shattering or anything, but yeah, it's all on point.
Yeah, and it gets you out the gate. Here is a short business description. So I did ask for a short business description and a longer business description. So here's a short business description. Again, it's certainly not written in a way I would copy and paste straight into your Google business profile. But then on the same note, it is, it's legible, it's acceptable. But yeah, I would, as a starting point to then build on, I'd say that's absolutely fine. Longer business description, I'm not going to read all that, but for the sake of this demo, you can get the prompt, run it for your own company. And then you have, here are the list of many services using SEO keywords that Ogle Web Design should add to their Google's business profile. So these are, I would suggest, these are the things that you add into the services within a Google business profile, which is a step that not every person that has a business profile actually does. Now, these are, I would say, and I haven't seen the ChatGPT one, but these will be more accurate because they've come from Google than the ChatGPT ones will be. So that's, and again, I'd certainly take that as a starting list to talk to you about, and review against any of the services that you have on your GBP profile to see if they're gonna marry up. I don't think, knowing you, I don't think there's anything there you don't do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great example of, like, if you do have a client you're bringing on board, to be able to run this and at least have a starting point. Now, obviously, you're going to have a conversation with them to find out exactly, okay, I don't do social media marketing, so we just cross that off the list. It's not a big deal, but that was something definitely in the realm of something a lot of agencies do, so it's not crazy to ask that. But to have this as a starting point to go to your client and say, hey, here are some beginning ideas. Let's narrow these things down and make sure, we're on the same page with everything. This feels like a huge shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's the point. It's a shortcut to get you to the discussion. It's not a shortcut to go and copy and paste all this stuff straight into Google Business Profile. Right, I'll jump into ChatGPT. So exactly the same prompt, and you can see that already these things are now a little different. So if I was going to put this in a document to present it to a client, this is laid out better because ChatGPT is better at the writing. It can also do tables and stuff like that, which is handy. But on the same note, some of the content might not be quite as well. I have realized that you spell Ogle with all capitals. It's put it like that because I miskeyed it. So don't judge it for that. So again, important things for local SEO, claim you Google My Business. Well, that's a bit pointless because it's already done it because we asked it to review the Google My Business in the prompt. Acquire reviews, look at backlinks. So these are maybe, again, these do feel like they've kind of just been regurgitated every time somebody's asked for a local audit. 10 best long tail search keywords. So these look very similar. Professional website revamp Richmond. I don't know if that's got any search volume behind it or not. I'd have to go and check it out. But it's a different idea. That the word revamp certainly wasn't on the other list.
Yeah.
Short. Now, here's a key thing. The short business description, that is very short. That is exactly what we asked it for. And the longer business description is exactly that. Maybe, again, wouldn't copy and paste them straight in. Absolutely not. But to get us out the gate, this has given us more of what we asked for than Bard did. And then list of services. Now, the key thing here is that ChatGPT has given you the service, but it's also given you a description, which again you can then put into your Google Business Profile. You can put a title and a description in. And if I'm not wrong, Bard only gave us the list of the list of the services themselves, not the descriptions. So ChatGPT's outperformed it a little bit there. And again, now interestingly, this has missed out social media marketing. Now, I can't tell you whether that's because you don't have that on your site, and if I did another agency that said they did social media, whether that would appear here. But it hasn't put it on. Where again, as we talked about, Bard did. So look, that's just a very easy way of creating a local audit. If you think about the amount of effort you would have to put in, okay, you could standardize part one, get that. But after that, you think about the amount of work you'd have to put in. You'd maybe talking 45 minutes to an hour's work for every business that you could do this with. And we've run it twice in the sense of 5 minutes on this call. That hasn't taken a lot of effort at all. So there's a very practical way that you can use, and as I say, I'll provide Kyle with a full prompt so you can copy and paste it out. Certain ways that prompt has been pieced together, things like at one point I ask it to talk to me like I'm a child, because I purposefully want it to write things in language that isn't kind of webbed for how you want. So that's the first or the first example that we can run through right now.
Yep.
The next example, right? Let's go and dive into Surfer, because I wanna get onto this. So this is the tool we're talking about. It's an AI tool, and what Kyle did was he sent me the link to this web page, which is about generating lead magnets on the Tab website. And he gave me the keyword that this was for is lead magnet ideas for agencies. So what Surfer went and did was it went and looked at the top 10 results for lead magnet ideas for agencies in the USA. And then it compared your copy, Kyle, against that, against the others in the top 10. And it also gave them a score so we understand what the competition's like. So what we have here is, now you actually ranked number 7. So it actually only compared you against 9 because one of them is you. But hey, we weren't to know that when we ran it. What you can see here is your score in terms of the overall score for the page. Yours is actually the lowest of these results that it's showing. Obviously, it's pulling out 5 others against you. And actually, it's saying that, right, you need to improve this by at least 13 points to get the best results. So that would take you up to 68, which would put you above the content that's in position 1 and position 3. You got to remember that this is an on the page assessment. So these domains that are in position 1 and 3 that are above you, even though they don't have the highest score, they might have a better backlink profile, they might have better domain age, they might have their authors and stuff set up. So there'll be other off-page factors to bear in mind, but it's certainly giving you the starting point. It's then said, right, look, you need more internal links. This page doesn't have enough links within your own website. It's got one from the author, which is Abby. Now, Abby, I'm not saying any of this is a criticism of you. I love you. You are brilliant. And this was just the piece that Kyle gave me, so please go and blame him. But what it's done is it's gone and found 2 other blogs on your website and said, you know what? Here, go and just put links in on that keyword. Go and put links in from these 2 blogs, and hey presto, you've you'll have as many internal links as those above you or around you. Then, if I'll skip this middle section in a minute, for the minute, it also says that you should add between 760 and 2,878 words in the body. So basically, your copy's a little bit short. But rather than just going and blabbing on about stuff, it's then gone and scanned what the other NLPs, that's natural language processing terms, that the other websites in the top 10 have used. So it's not just saying go and add words. It's saying go and add words, but include these. So lead magnet ideas, you only have 3, the average is between 8 and 21. So you need to go and add at least 5 or no more than 18 in order to put you into the mix. Lead magnet NLP, you have 34. The average is between 36 and 73. So okay, go and add a couple. But as you can see, these all have search volume as well. So if you can structure them correctly in there, you can start picking up traffic in other searches, other related searches through this piece of content. And look, that's quite an exhaustive list of things to get in. You, by all means, you don't have to get them all in, but you can get some of them in whilst you're improving your word count. You need to improve the number of words in your headers. You need to improve the number of words you've got in in the bold tag or a strong tag. You need to add more words in paragraphs. Okay, well, that's, if you're adding more words, you're going to be putting them in paragraphs. So look, there's the Surfer report. Kyle, this will stay live. So again, if you want to include a link to this in the show notes, feel free. And the final thing with this tool is, you know what, it gives you all this information. And if you go and do these things, you can come back to this page and hit the refresh button, and it'll just rescore you. So you know almost in real time how you're getting on with improving your page. So this is maybe more an example of a custom built tool that's designed for a particular job, but it is utilizing AI to cut out so much review and legwork, and actually give you the information that you need in order to improve the SEO performance of a single piece of content.
Yeah, you could have gone through all those other results and counted how many times they wrote trial period, but that would be a pretty wasteful use of your time, I would imagine.
Well, so you would have done. You probably wouldn't have picked it up because it's only suggested that it's in. You put it in once.
Sure. It was just the first one I saw.
But yeah, you get the idea. It's not really giving you the information to do like SEO as coloring by numbers. There's still that experience you need in there. There's still that judgment call you need to make. But what it is doing is presenting you with a ton of information that's all relevant, and then you can make the decisions as you know, as to which ones you want to action, which ones you're not going to action, etc., etc. And look, the whole process of SEO isn't about doing everything perfectly. The whole process of SEO, as this graph at the top demonstrates, is about just being better than everybody else that's ranking in the top 10. You know, if we'd done this and all these scores were in the 40s, then actually, you know what, your score of 55, you'd be right up here anyway. So it's all about the contextual competition of just being better than the people that are above you.
Sure.
Right. Have you got anything else to add to that one, or should we move on?
No, I think that's great. I would I like the idea of this report and being able to see these suggestions seem pretty easy. So now that I know I'm ranking number 7, I had no idea of that when I even sent this to you. Now I feel like I need to go in there and make some tweaks and improve it.
Yeah, well, as I say, Abby, don't shoot me. It's all Kyle.
It's my fault.
Right. I'm going to go into ChatGPT and start a new chat and say that I would like a, just provide me with, right, one note actually before we go into this. We did say that ChatGPT can't query the internet, which it can't. But I also said that ChatGPT you can feed information into it. And look, it's got the word chat in the title, so you can interact with it a bit like a chat bot, essentially. So just because it's going to give you something back doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't mean that you can't tell it that it's wrong or too formal or not quite there or whatever it might be. The other thing to bear in mind is that ChatGPT is going to always want to please you. So, I mean, this thing even apologizes if you query it. So you've got to bear that in mind with the output. It may be generating certain things because it's what it thinks you want to hear rather than anything else. So one of the things we do now, I don't have, actually, maybe should have got you to fill one of these out before this call, Kyle, but we have, for any clients that are on an SEO retainer with us, we get them to fill out this keyword research questionnaire. It's just a Google Doc with, 8 or 9 questions in it. But what this means is when we start a chat for a client's piece of content or a client strategy or whatever it might be, I can say, hey, we are putting together a new blog post for Ogle Web design in Richmond, Virginia, on the topic of lead magnet ideas for agencies, because that's what I've got copied. They have provided the following information about their business. Okay. And then we can then go and take the content of that Google Doc, take the questions and copy and paste those straight into this chat about ChatGPT. So you've got to apologize for my typing. It's rubbish when, doing this on Zoom is like, it's like the 2020, well, it's the post-COVID version of somebody looking over your shoulder, isn't it? When you're used to work in an office.
Trying to write and talk at the same time is not easy.
Yeah. So just ignore the spelling, but you get the idea. So we can then just go and paste those questions in here. I didn't actually copy them. That's a bit embarrassing. We can just go and copy and paste them in there with the questions and the answers. So we can then, we're spoon feeding this information through to ChatGPT. I'll obviously take that out because we haven't filled it in. And then we can say, I didn't mean to hit enter. Oh, it's going to give me the structure anyway.
Like you said, it just wants to please you.
It just wants to please. So it's kind of given me what I was going to do was ask it for some. Let me stop generating. Can you provide a list of blog topic titles that will rank for that keyword? Okay. You get the idea. So there you go. So now we're starting at the beginning of the process. I'm not asking it to do anything that's more complicated than come up with a list of potential blog topic ideas. So here we go. It's gonna do it. I could have maybe asked it to put a short description about what would have been each one as well. That might have been valuable. But again, if you're running out of inspiration or we have clients that try and rank for really competitive keywords. We sometimes have to create dozens of pieces of content, all with internal links in about a single theme. So having a shortcut that's going to help us with the inspiration to some ideas, not a problem. This, again, not something I necessarily cut and paste straight to a client, but certainly gives me, out of the 15, maybe 4 or 5 that I could massage to present over to you as the client, Kyle.
Yeah.
When we've done that,
I've done something kind of similar in ChatGPT before too, to like help me structure like silos of content. Here's what the business does. Here's a description of it. Here's the things they want to be ranking for. What categories should I set up in my blog for the types of content that I'm going to do? And then what kind of topics could I have inside of each one of those categories? And yeah, I can go do all that. And I'm going to have to check over all its work. But man, it's really a great shortcut for getting it done quickly, getting me, a bunch of words on the page that I can start with and start rearranging things and, making sense of all of it.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant thing to do, grouping things together. And look, that's you can ask ChatGPT or Bard to do that. And maybe Bard might be slightly more up to date. It all though depends on the topics, doesn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're dealing with a local plumber or a local butcher or a local whatever it is, the reality is that the data as of September 2021 is going to be perfectly fine for that kind of grouping. If on the other hand, like we gave the example of the law client, we're trying to deal with stuff that happened last month. That's not going to be in ChatGPT's wheelhouse. So you got to understand where its limitations are. Can you provide a potential? So I'm just saying that you've chosen one of the titles. Blog structure for number 4, for example. And then it'll go and give me the certainly the blog structure or a blog structure, which I could then start to use. Again, maybe this is just to get a feel of how it needs to go. And then I could then lift this and take the bits of it that I want and then put it into a tool like Surfer. And in their content editor, you can then get like real-time numbers as we're writing. And then, of course, then if we need particular facts or whatever, I could then use Bard to lift a section out and say, hey, can you get me the latest news topics on this, because it's helped me with a blog post, and off you go. So it's very easy to start to put together, get out the gates. And that's really the thing I'm trying to emphasize with this. We will not publish any of these words that you see on here. Will never be published without going through a thorough, without going through our full copywriting process. But in terms of being more efficient and getting an idea of the scope, then absolutely. The other thing that Surfer did, like you saw on here, if I was then generating this in real time, is this gave us the word count, didn't it? It said that the word count was short. Can't remember where it is.
Yeah, I think it's towards the top.
Yeah, there you go. So it says, the average here is 3,000 to 5,000 words. So again, we could maybe feed that in, or we know how many sections we need, or that kind of thing. So we can start to get data together and start to use some of these tools together. So again, for getting you out of the gate, it's real easy. Once you've then produced the piece of content, you can then come back to the same chat. So you've got to remember, the chat, it's a chat. And just because you go away from it doesn't mean that it's forgotten everything that's in here. So I can then ask it to write a, for this post, write an SEO meta title and meta description, 150 chars that entice the user to click through, focused on the keyword. I should have had all of these things.
You're good. We love watching you type.
Welcome to Watch Pete Type with Kyle.
You think we'd get a lot of views on that channel?
Hey, I don't know. I mean, I might say some like absurd things. You don't know what I'm going to type.
That's very true. Anytime we're together, usually something absurd happens. So.
Something does, yeah. So look, I mean, this is, look, we haven't been through the full process here, but it gives you the idea that, again, you should be able to come back to these things, and with all of the information I copied and pasted in from the client questionnaire, and then the structure around the blog post. And hey, you know what? I could have said, look, we've restructured this blog post to have these headings, and listed the headings before I asked for the meta title and description. So again, I could have done that and then asked for the meta title and description. But if we run an SEO audit and somebody needs 500 meta titles and 300 meta descriptions writing, this tool's bloody invaluable.
Yeah, it is amazing how it will remember things inside of a chat. We were talking about earlier. I've gotten like a whole structure of bookmarks for that, because having to go back and find things. Like yesterday, I was working on something for my starter site, and I was working on writing some code that it was helping me with or whatever. And I had a few different options of things I wanted to try, and I was like, do this, no, let's try it this other way. And then when I came back to ask it for something, it was hours later or whatever, I just updated it and said, hey, by the way, I went with this option instead of that option. So, from here on out, just assume I'm doing it that way. And it was great with keeping up with all that and remembering kind of where we are in context, which is awesome. I have noticed that though, the longer those chats get and the further away you are from wherever that information originally was, it's like me, it just starts forgetting, so I'll give it some very specific instructions at the very beginning, and maybe it's the amount of time that elapsed or the amount of prompts and words we've done since then. It's like every once in a while you have to go back in there and kind of remind it of what we were doing in the first place.
That's absolutely it. So we generally tend to use one chat per month per client. So we have that keyword research questionnaire, and we will go and start a new chat each month, because you're right, they do get a bit exhausted by the end. And you can tell, the more you get to use these tools, you can tell when they start being a little bit off. So yeah, we found that actually just running a new chat each month for each client, but starting with inputting their keyword priorities or their keyword questionnaire information is kind of the easiest or the best way that we can be productive with it.
Yeah, my little hack for that too has been when you're kind of getting to the end, or when something's working really well, or you got it the way you want it, prompt it to write you a prompt essentially for the next time you want to start this over. So you can ask it to like summarize everything we've done here and the key points and all that kind of stuff. You grab that, you save it somewhere in your project management tool or whatever. And then when you start a new chat, you can grab that, and it's like you're giving it all the history it needs to start off on the right foot. So you don't have to start from square one again. And I've used that little trick a million times, like having ChatGPT create the prompts for future ChatGPT chats, you know?
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I might nick that one. I don't think we've done that. We normally just, as I say, put the questionnaire back in, which is that's
so
a great
I
idea.
was working on that with like brand voice type things. So I
Yeah.
fed it tons of my content. Like, hey, I'm gonna provide you with 20 copies of my newsletter, one at a time. Every time I finish sending you one, just tell me you got it until we get through with 20. And I fed them all in there. And I said, okay, now based on all those newsletters you read, I want you to write up a profile of my writing style. So then it went through and like figured out the patterns I use, the speech, the tone of voice, all those kinds of things, and wrote up a really nice guide. So when I do go to prompt new things, I can just start with like, here's my, here's the guide on how to write for me. It's still not perfect, but it's better than starting that from scratch every time.
Absolutely. But if you're then writing for different clients each month, if you can build that profile and say, look, here's the last 10 blogs that the client wrote on their website, and feed that in, you can then get ChatGPT to give you a brand voice guideline for each client, so that as you're then moving from client to client to client, you have those things all written up.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely, things like that, summarizing information, it's it's absolutely brilliant for. Mate, I've lost track of time. I don't know how much more of this do you want to do.
We're good. If you want to show us another example, let's do at least one more. I know this is getting long already.
Okay, let's I don't know how well this is going to work. This sometimes has mixed results, but let's give this a go. So let's pick a relatively competitive keyword. Let's pick kitchen tiles. Summarize the website structures for the top 10 results in the UK for the keyword. I do have a tiling company as a client.
Nice. Hey, getting a little work done while we goof off here. Perfect.
Kitchen tiles has come to mind. So, yeah, absolutely. Two birds, one stone, Right. So while that's doing its thing, so here you go. So it's gone and found, right. So Town Mountain is one of their competitors. Yeah, you see, this hasn't worked quite as I was expecting it to. All right. But this is what I mean. If it doesn't give you what you were expecting, you can query it. That's right. This isn't to say that this prompt hasn't worked. It might have been the fact that I just keyed it in not very accurately, or that, as I said, this one's a bit hit and miss. I'm still working the kinks out of this one.
Yeah, I think I've found the more descriptive you can be about exactly what you want, like as humans, when you said, tell me the website structure or whatever, I had a picture in my mind exactly what that meant. Just based off of conversations I've had with people talking about website structure before, but I think maybe had you been more explicit with it, it might have been a little bit better, which I'm sure is what you're doing now.
So here you go. So I've then added in a second prompt in that says, right, from those results, give me the top level categories so that I can plan out the navigation for another website. So I haven't told it what that website is, and it's broken down into types of tiles, styles, colors, shapes, sizes, price, and brands. Now, I know from working with the client that other than price, they wouldn't put price in a navigation. That is basically how they would want their mega menus to work. So it has given me, okay, it took me 2 stabs at the go, but it has given me the information. Now, if this was, of course, a new client, or a client that you were developing a new website for a new business, then of course this can now start to very quickly inform how you're going to put your navigation structure together. If you've run some keyword research, so You can give me the related keywords to kitchen tiles. If you've run the keyword research, I probably would have done this before I was figuring out the navigation, to be honest. But you can then start to. Now, here's the thing: they don't have splashback tiles as a menu item on their website. So maybe I have learned something from this. But they do all of the others. Yeah, you can very easily again start to get the information back. Now, again, this is in Bard; it's not laid out as well. It does have these handy click-through links, which you don't get in ChatGPT. This would have been better if it had been laid out into a table. But there you go. So yeah, you can start to now. The other thing you can do with Bard is then feed in the URL of the website. Now, of course, I didn't do that. You can feed in the URL of the website and ask it to find out if there are any gaps in the category structure or the navigation structure or whatever it might be of the website, so you can start to fill in holes based on the websites that are in the top 10 for a given keyword. So very similar way of using the prompt, just in a different context.
Fantastic. Well, if you don't mind, I have a couple of quick hitty type questions. Maybe we can go back to just us chatting here for a second. I'd like to get your take on a few of these things. And then we'll wrap it up. All right. It is Friday. I'm sure you want to get out of here.
I'm going to take a drink because I've spoken a lot.
Yeah. So we talked a little, you shared a prompt with us early in this call, one that you had developed pretty deeply. And then some of these you kind of just did off the cuff, which I imagine are similar to ones you've done before and just kind of like how you've learned to speak to the chatbots. Are you keeping like logs of prompts that work really well? How are you handling all this new information you're learning?
So we have a list in ClickUp that's right next to our SOPs that allows us to save prompts and then tag them against particular SOPs. So we've been doing it that way. It also means that I must admit some of them I've been keying in partly because I didn't have everything open, which I should have done, and I could have copied and pasted a few more of them over. But we are a team. I have a few people that work for me, so because of that we wanted an area whereby other people could make changes, and we then document those changes in the comments that come alongside every ClickUp chat. So we have like a change history, if you like, to the prompts as we go. So that's how we're managing it.
And I'm sure you've seen all the AI gurus. I hope this didn't come across as an AI guru call, but all the AI gurus are selling packages of prompts and things. I've looked through some of them myself, and maybe it was just the ones I saw, but I have opinions about them. Have you looked at any of those?
I went on to an ad for, I can't remember whether it was 100 or 1,000 ChatGPT prompts, and they were giving away the first 20 for free. So I went and downloaded the first 20 and tried all of them, and they were all useless.
Yeah, to me, the ones I looked at felt like they asked ChatGPT to make a document of 1,000 ChatGPT prompts, and that was the end of it. Like, man, they really screwed us on that one. But yeah, I guess what I found is, in like inside of our table calls, we've done some calls just kind of sharing what we're doing with AI, sharing some prompts and stuff. I haven't found it extremely useful to just copy and paste somebody else's thing into ChatGPT or whatever and get results. What I've gotten more use out of is like figuring out my own workflow for things, and like the follow-up type things I need to do. Like, it feels like you have to have so much more of a personal interaction with it, that the idea of just like copying and pasting and getting results just doesn't seem like it's worked for me.
No, you're dead right. And we've touched on this multiple times in the call. However you start, you need to have a process to give the AI some context, whether that's copying and pasting in the questionnaire like I've been doing, whether that's asking it to do a summary of a previous chat and then copy and pasting that into a new chat. You need to at the end of the day, the tool can only work with what you give it. So if you literally think you can copy and paste 3 or 4 sentences from a PDF that you've downloaded for $97 and it's going to make your business work, it's not going to happen like that. That's not going to work. These tools do make life easier, but they're not there to you still need to know how to use them efficiently. You know,
Right.
I can't use design software and Figma and whatever very well because I don't use it very much. You'll be able to design a website in that stuff far quicker than I will be able to. But then, you know, but then there's things that I'll be able to do better than you. That's absolutely fine. But there will be things that you will have in that process that you will just naturally do. And you need to figure that out for these tools. It's just like using anything else. And really, that is what's going to set. I don't want to use the word power users because I sound like I'm going to send you a picture of me stood with a Ferrari in front of a stately home, you know. But that's what's going to set the people that can use these tools well and actually get the benefit from them for real results versus the people that are just going to create massively generic content that's repeated on dozens and dozens of websites.
Yeah. And obviously, Google's never liked poor content before. It's not going to like poor AI content just because you generated a ton of it. You know, I
No.
think the idea of quality over quantity was true before, and it remains true. You know, post AI or during, I don't know what it's called now that we have AI. Um, all right, so this last one, two more, I guess. One more I want to ask is, all right, so we're getting to the point now where you query something into Google and it's just going to start giving us AI responses to it, where we never even have to click through a website to do our research or find anything out. Obviously, we run into the problems when, you know, if AI just is feeding off of other AI information, we get into a vicious cycle. But I guess everybody kind of is worried about the search engine results page. Is it going to be as valuable once an AI just gives people the answer? Because I think a lot of the questions people ask in Google are like, I don't know, is asparagus healthy? You don't really need to visit a website to get the answer to that. An AI can answer that perfectly. And now you've killed off the traffic to wherever these things were going before. That was probably a poor example, but you know, how are you feeling about the value of SEO once AI is just all over the search results?
Yeah. Look, Google's main algorithm works with a number of kind of themes to it, which if you Google it, I'm sure if you AI it as well, you'll find out that that's basically the acronym EEAT. So expertise, experience, authority, and trust. They're the four kind of silos that the algorithm kind of fits into. Now, those things aren't actually mentioned in the algorithm. It's a thematic way of understanding it. But because of that, what Google is consciously trying to do is link content back to an experienced person who has the expertise that they need, and they're using that personal factor as a differentiator within their algorithm to try and split out results. On August the 23rd, so literally 2 weeks ago from the date of recording, they rolled out a relevance update to their SERPs, and that is still rolling out. It's kind of in the tail end of the rollout now across the globe, but that is very much aimed at trying to identify things like repetition, things like incorrect facts, that kind of stuff. That is the first step, or one of the steps, in trying to reduce the amount of AI content in the SERPs. Now, all of that being said, if I'm doing AI for a client, if you're doing AI for AI, if you're doing SEO for a client, if I'm doing SEO for a client, if somebody watching this is doing SEO for a client, I would be very wary about simply running an SEO retainer based on search position to say, right, well, I'll get you onto page 1 for that. I'll get you into position 5 for that, whatever. Your SEO efforts need to be hooked into a metric that is making a difference to the end client. So whether that's inquiries, whether that's sales, whether that's quotes that are generated, whatever it is, your SEO strategy should be linked to a tangible metric back in the client's side. So based on that, if somebody is wanting to know if asparagus was good for you, well, I'm guessing that wouldn't have led to many asparagus plant sales, if that was your client, if you know what I mean. It's too much of a generic term. So like I said earlier, SEO isn't always about doing everything right. It's about doing those things better than the competition so that you appear at the top.
Fair enough. All right, last one. We've seen recently where I guess they're adding or have already added something you can add to your robots.txt file to discourage AI bots from crawling your website. Is that I can see pros and cons to doing that. Obviously, as somebody who's had content stolen before, I don't really just want a bot to come in and steal everything I've ever written and start dishing it out in their platform for free. I don't really love the idea of that. However, at the same time, I am now using ChatGPT or AI tools sometimes as a search engine for things that I might have put into Google before. And if other people are going to do that, and if these things do cite sources, which I know Bard does and ChatGPT at this moment does not, I kind of want my thoughts to be the one in there. I want to be the authority in whatever those questions are. So I can see pros and cons to it. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Firstly, there's a context side to this. I fully get why artists are by far the most outspoken people when it comes to this, and not wanting the AIs to learn from pictures of their artwork that might be on the internet. What's the point in buying a Monet for $10 million if you can just ask Midjourney to create one, a brand new one that no one's ever seen before, and for $17 or whatever the subscription is. So there's got to be a bit of context with this. If you're using, I'm going to use this word general again, or average websites for average people, you probably don't need to worry about it too much. How much are you actually going to say? I can see where your situation's a little bit different, though. You are a content machine, and you have been generating content like a machine for a good number of years now. You have that as a portfolio, and it does give an identity to who you are, what the admin bar is, and what Ogle web design does, etc., etc. So you may want to think about being a bit more protective over it. There's a part of me that says, we all should be in this together. And actually, we're all kind of investing in making these tools better if we give it access to the content. Really, the linchpin for me will be, at the moment, the biggest search engine is Google. The second biggest search engine is still YouTube. So until the AIs can actually be validated as like a reasonable search source or a reasonable place to gain links, then for me, that's not too much of a consideration as to whether I should include it for that or not. Picking up on your point. But yeah, that's probably a bit of a scattergun approach. It's kind of contextual. I know the tiling client I have, we have blocked the AIs from looking at their stuff because they have some they resell some products, but they also manufacture others, and they don't want their manufactured products to get to that data to get into the AI databases, which I respect. Whereas, I also work, I'd say the vast majority of clients, we haven't blocked the AIs from crawling. So I can see both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I've not done anything about it. I've just kept my eye on it. I know when that was posted about inside the group, there was definitely people on both sides of it there, like people immediately going to block it and other people that just don't care. All right. Well, Pete, I really appreciate this. I want to give you a second here. I know you mentioned at the beginning of this call your podcast that you've been doing for a long time and a new podcast coming out. You also had teased some ideas in an email, I believe, about maybe doing a new version of your SEO course. So I would love to hear about all those things before we kick you out of here.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah. So I'll try and do this as a better elevator pitch than my average agency. So yeah, I run Retain FM, which is that's my personal podcast. It's a podcast aimed at helping digital agencies gain and service retained clients, essentially to help them build their agencies on recurring revenue. That's over at petereverett.com. Feel free to go and find it. There's a Facebook group if you want to go and see it. Kyle's been on it a number of times. And yeah, we always have a good laugh. The new podcast is called the WP SEO Show. That is being produced by SEO Hive. And that is going to be what that show is designed to do is to engage with the WordPress community, with that WordPress discussion and SEO, because there isn't really too many people that are doing that. There's loads of blogs about how to optimize a website, what are the best plugins and whatever. But actually, in terms of looking at what WordPress can do, how it does it, how the updates that we regularly get, that we all have on maintenance plans, all that kind of stuff. I'm making it sound really boring, but
No,
it's
no,
not.
I'm into it.
All of that kind of stuff, and engaging that with the with the WordPress community, with agencies that use WordPress. That's what that show is about. So yeah, that will be released within about 10 days of this recording. So depending on when this goes live, it may be up, or if not, it may be not very far away. So yeah, that's that. And then the final thing is I'm looking at developing. So I had a course, I still have a course, although it's not open for sale, called Demystifying SEO, which was a breakdown about how to do SEO on any website. And then there was some advanced modules that were a bit more agency focused, to do with generating SEO strategies that work and how to sell SEO retainers. So the reason that's not for sale at the moment is that it just needs a bit of TLC. Some of the stuff's a little bit outdated. I did write it 5 years ago, so SEO's moved on a little bit since then. As part of that, I'm looking at relaunching the course, stroke adding in another module. I don't yet know whether it's going to be a course in its own right, whether it's going to be an extra module that fits into demystifying SEO. I haven't figured all that out, but which is about demystifying AI for SEO, where we go far more into the pros, the cons, the how-tos, some prompts, some far more detail. A lot of the stuff we've been covering on this call, but in far more detail, and actually putting those things into SOPs so that agencies that do go through that process can then use it in their agency and develop their prompts and their develop AI into their services alongside developing their SOPs. And we've done calls on SOPs in the past. So Kyle, I've done that with the admin bar. So yeah, if you want to know a bit more about why you should have SOPs, go and look at that.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well, I'm sure if people follow you in all the places we just discussed, they'll know about the course and the updates to that whenever it happens. Well, Pete, I am very thankful of your time here today. I think this was super interesting. It's now I'm jonesing to get back into AI tools and mess around. I think my deal is I have to limit how much time I will play with these things, because you know what? I've actually been really thankful of the limits in ChatGPT, because it's like, oh shit, I just ran out of 50 credits. I probably do need to take a break and go do something else for a while. So I was really excited when that went from 25 to 50, but it's actually a good governor on myself. So just watching how much time I can waste doing that.
No, thanks for having me, Kyle. And I hope people watching this have found this useful. Not regarding my average agency and my bad typing.
All right, Pete. Well, we'll do this again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Cheers, Kyle.
All right.